Hello everyone, greetings from Mumbai. I'm here with Dr. Anita Patil-Deshmukh, who is the director at PUKAR. So thank you, Dr. Anita, for being with me today and making some time. Tell me, what is PUKAR? There's sort of two different meanings to the word PUKAR in this sense. So what does PUKAR mean, both in terms of Hindi and both in terms of the acronym that it stands for?
So PUKAR in Hindi means a clarion call, and the PUKAR acronym stands for Partners for Urban Knowledge, Action and Research. And in a certain way, I think it's very appropriate that Professor Padrai decided to call it a PUKAR, because PUKAR essentially, the organization essentially has created a clarion call to the youth of this country and globally to become the researchers in the process of democratizing knowledge, democratizing research, and changing the profile and the ownership of knowledge producers. So in that way, it's very appropriate.
Right. Well, let's dig into that a little bit. Tell me, what is the history of the organization? Why did it come into being, and what is it trying to do in a general sense?
So Professor Anita Patil-Deshmukh is a very well-known cultural anthropologist. He and his wife, late Professor Carol Breckenridge, both have been coming to Mumbai over a long period of time. Arjun, of course, is a Mumbaiker, born, raised in Mumbai, and like most of us were migrants to the city. Most of his research focused on the city. And when he was coming here and there was this more and more discussions about urbanization and the city, what he and Carol recognized is most of these discussions would have urban planners, engineers, policymakers, construction people, but there was no inclusion of people who form the core of the city. There was no inclusion of culture, social paradigms and social ethos of the city, and they thought that it was very essential that that part is inserted into this discussions and discourses about the city. And originally PUKAR was formulated as a forum for debates related to cities, related to urbanization, related to globalization, with people's focus. So first 3 years, PUKAR most of the time functioned as a think tank, where we called economists and urban planners and architects and designers and filmmakers and artists and policymakers and activists and common people to create a debate about how a city should be. I mean, I think now if you look back and I look at this whole entire debate about smart city, I said, yeah, you're calling this a smart city, but we haven't debated this since 2001.
Right. And so when did you take a turn more to focusing on the democratization of research?
I think I joined PUKAR in 2005, and that was the year we launched this project called Youth Fellowship Program, which essentially focuses on democratizing research, making it available to everybody and anybody who is the resident of the city and who contributes to the city in his or her way, to challenge the prevalent wisdom that research can only be done by highly educated people only at the academic institutions, and to create knowledge at the community, by the community youth, from their lens and their aspiration, based on their aspirations, their problems, their desires, their issues, and create a new knowledge which could never be produced in a high-end academic institution.
I think there's several things that really stand out to me and why I'm excited to be visiting PUKAR today. And we'll dig a little bit more into the Youth Fellowship Program, because it's quite a large-scale program and one that has a long history now, going back to 2005. Yeah. But there's also some conceptual pieces that I find really interesting in the approach here. First is the framing of research as the right to research, as a rights focus. So say a little bit about that as well.
So this particular concept came out of Professor Appadurai's seminal essay called Right to Research, which he published in 2004. And what he claims is that research is not an exclusive right of only highly educated people. It can be done by ordinary people. It is, after all, a tool. It is a tool to produce knowledge about the city, and it needs to be produced where people live. Now, in a city like Mumbai, where 60% of the people live in informal settlements, that should possibly be one of the best places to produce the knowledge about the research, and also needs to be done by people who live there, which is what the fellowship program is all about.
And another piece of the theoretical framework here that I find really interesting is the idea of documentation as intervention. So say a little bit how that is one of the focuses of how the program works, or how the PUKAR model is designed.
So we believe that, first of all, we believe that each youth of the city has an asset of knowledge. He or she possesses the knowledge about his family, about his locality, about his community he or she belongs to. But most of the time this knowledge is only hearsay and more anecdotal. Therefore, it does not carry the value which a research paper knowledge will carry. And we thought that needed to change. And what the project essentially has shown us over a period of 10 years is that the minute we start documenting, whether as a narrative, whether as a photograph, whether it is a map of the community, the minute the knowledge is visual or read, it becomes a very powerful tool in the hands of the community to leverage it for their own benefit, for leveraging it and negotiating it for their welfare with the policymakers. For example, when we were working with Kalavanda, which is a small, old, 60-year-old slum, literally 20 minutes from Fort, which is our financial district of the city. That particular slum is not even on the map of the local municipal authority because it is located on a federally owned land. Therefore, it is not on the map. Therefore, the people never got any services, simple services like water, sanitation, electricity, housing, which is common to many informal settlements in Mumbai. But the minute we mapped it and we did a survey with the help of the local Barefoot researchers, and we documented that the immunization rate in this particular slum is 29%, while the rest of the Mumbai slums are anywhere between 60 to 65% depending upon where you go. We could then take the documented data to the health commissioner and to say, okay, we need to do something about it. She was very good and she said, how can we help you? And then we got the health camps, we did door-to-door education with the people, and the beautiful part of this education is it was done by the youth who lives there. So people can share information with a lot of confidence because they are sharing it with their own kids or their own neighbors' kids or their own friends' kids who live amongst them. So the granularity of information can be extracted, which normally we could never do if we paratroop on a community, which is what we do if we are researchers from a university. After that education and the health camps of 2 years, we did a repeat survey and showed clearly that the immunization rate went up to 90.7%. And that's a dramatic jump. It's best, one of the best in the countries. But because we could document all of this, it suddenly became a validated result. If we just say, oh, the immunization rate is very poor, no policymaker will believe it. when we mapped the slum and we showed there are no water resources any place in this 15,000 plus population, then they would believe it. Otherwise, nobody's going to believe it. Now, people can take that map and go to the policymakers to say, here is our reality, you need to change it. So that's how documentation becomes an intervention, it becomes an extremely powerful tool, especially for poor who don't have much of anything else.
So really taking that popular knowledge and making it visible and making it forceful for the ears that need to hear it.
Yes.
It's very powerful.
Yes.
And for those who aren't that familiar with Mumbai, Dr. Anita can correct me on these figures, but as I've heard, there are about 2,000 informal settlements in this city. And the city is approximately 21 million people. Some of these slum areas, as they're called, have upwards of 600,000 to 1 million people, Dharavi being one of the largest and most well-known. So you think about potentially 2,000 informal settlements in the city, you're talking about a significant part of the city that oftentimes doesn't have the legal entitlements or the structural entitlements that you would expect someone in a city of the wealth and affluence in Mumbai to actually have. It's a city of massive inequality, and to really try to work with people in these informal settlements, sometimes called slums, is really just an absolutely necessary endeavor in a city with this much inequality in it, it seems.
I think so, because these are the voices which are never heard. These are the people who are never existent for the affluent and the wealthy. So they almost always are looked at as something that we need to hide, something we need to disown. But I always imagine a day when who does the driving of your car? Who takes your children to the school? Who washes your clothes? Who cooks your meals? Who brings you newspaper? Who brings you milk? If tomorrow every single person of this city who does all this work for us decides to go on strike, this city will come to a dead end. And I really wish someday the day will come. Because then only people are going to realize the contribution these people who live in informal settlements actually make to the city. I mean, if you look at the amount of contribution Dharavi makes to the city's economy, it's phenomenal.
Right.
But it's not recognized.
Right. Well, just to say a little bit more about Dharavi, I was there last week with students from the program I was working with here from Northeastern University, and got to know a bit more about Dharavi. And the GDP, they say, produced by this 1-2 square kilometer area is greater than the country of Somalia because of the amount of work that's happening. And there's a lot of recycling that happens there, so there's actually quite a bit of environmental services provided by people. 80% of the city's plastic is recycled and cleaned and reprocessed in this one place within the city. So it's really sort of, if people aren't informed, they really overlook or they make judgments about what's happening in these places. In fact, they are quite industrious places and adding a lot and improving the quality of life to the city rather than detracting from it.
And the sad part is too, number one, while they improve the life of the city, their life doesn't get improved. Second thing is when they're looking at GDP, they're only looking at GDP in terms of the actual monetary issue. But the amount of environmental damage that they're reducing, nobody's calculating that. If you calculate that, remember, it will be massive. And nobody looks at that.
That was one of the things we were thinking of doing when we work with some of these organizations that work with the waste collectors, is to frame them as green workers, as environmental service providers,
Yes.
Because right now all that work is being, as you say, not counted at all, and there's no value given to them, and they're not valued for this other piece that they really are contributing to everyone's well-being in the city. Well, let's take a little bit more data. One of the things that really attracted me to PUKAR was the Youth Fellowship Program, because I've done some similar work over the years in Appalachia with the Clear Fork Community Institute around a program we call Community-Led Action Research, which was very much an initial program for a couple of years that's a little bit like the Youth Fellowship Program. So I'm really fascinated to learn more about this program. So just tell me kind of what is the Youth Fellowship Program, what are the bare bones of it, and how has it been growing since 2005?
So basically it's a group research. We invite a group of youth, 10 to 12 to 15 youth in a group, and we invite them to join the program after proper interviews and everything. And the idea is we tell them not anybody can join, there is no inclusion criteria like education, age, etc. But we usually prefer to have youth somewhere from 16, 17, 18 to up to 30, which is our definition of youth in the central arena. And then we say, anybody can join. There is no barrier as far as language education is concerned, but there are two conditions actually. One is that your research needs to be anchored in your locality, wherever you are. It needs to be located in your own life's condition. So it's an experiential learning process. It's not so much an academic process, but it's very much a hands-on process. And the third idea is that because most of these youth come from either poor background or lower middle class backgrounds, where majority of them have to earn to continue their lives. So we say, you need to continue what you're doing. We will do this research only over the weekend. So it's a 42 to 45 Sunday over a year program. It only works from Sunday to Sunday to Sunday. The idea of doing a group research is that in a group, people have to learn to negotiate. There is a diversity within the group, and there is a diversity in between the groups. So people have to learn to respect differences of opinions. They have to respect differences in language, education, backgrounds. They have to learn to do consensus building, conflict resolution, and teamwork. In a country like India, which is multicultural, multi-plural, multi-linguistic, multi-religious, the diversity is so huge. So unless we teach youth right from the beginning how to deal with diversity in a positive way, we are going to see this country shackled away, and which is happening today everywhere in India. It's of a huge concern to many of us. And I think this group research is basically encouraging or trying to sustain an electoral, inclusive, participatory democracy. Those four words are very critical too, because we really need to help sustain that kind of democracy. Today in India's democracy, it is neither inclusive nor very participatory. If we need to change that, we need to take care of or take advantage of the demographic dividend we have in terms of youth. I mean, today 50% of this country's population is less than 45 years of age. So that is a group which we need to focus and build these skills. They do research on the subject related to what they want. They are facilitators who help them through the program. The teaching or the training is divided into three areas. One is related to self and self-discovery. Second is related to all the research techniques, starting from research ethics to interviews, questionnaires, surveys, case studies, focus group discussions. How do you take consent? How do you communicate? How do you learn? How do you unlearn? Empathetic listening, a word which has hardly ever existed in Indian lexicon. We teach youth to do that. And the third area is related to social realities that surround them, which is related to caste, religion, linguistic diversities, inequality, justice. It's important that they learn all of this. So these are the three different models under which we have about 30 to 40 workshops in an entire year. Workshops are done, some of us are done, mostly I think research-related workshops are done by PUKAR team because their expertise. The social realities workshops are usually done by people or academics from Tata Institute of Social Sciences. Self-discovery workshops are done usually by activists who are in the area, so they get a multifaceted learning process. And I think the two things that we have noticed is that there is an enormous amount of self-transformation that this process brings. So the transformation happens in them, which is remarkable. It happens in their families, in their people. It happens in the communities with whom they work, and of course it happens in the country. So we have changed a lot since the program started. I mean, if I had to give an example of sense transformation in a family, 2 years ago we had a group of girls who was working in transgender. Now the word transgender would fear them, but somehow they agreed to and came up with the idea that they will learn more about transgender. So transgender and transgender sexuality were the words that were not ever uttered in their homes. At the end of 9 months, I remember, they all went to see a theatre related to transgender subject, but a girl who actually brought her mother and her aunt to see that. When she was telling Sunil, who is our facilitator, she said, I could have never imagined this. That my mother, not only would she listen to it, but she's willing to come and see this and learn. Those are the kind of transformations we see happening in the families and in the communities all the time, and I think those are very critical.
It's doubly powerful because it's people who are not coming from affluent, highly educated backgrounds, people with minimal access to education and minimum years in schools, so it's doubly powerful for them to be able to use those experiences to transform their cultural experiences with each other. Again, one of the focuses of this blog is around participatory methods, so say a little bit more about where ideas of participation fit, because obviously you're working to have participation in who the researchers are, but as I understand it, there's also a strong emphasis in how methodologies are used by those researchers. There's a lot of focus on inclusion and participation by the researchers themselves.
Right, so whenever, number one, they have to, even in a group process, we ensure that everybody within the group participates, because what happens in a group, somebody is more talkative, more confident, somebody is very quiet, doesn't want to, but we teach them that, okay, each one of you brings a different strength to the group, so it is your sort of your job to figure out who brings what strength and make sure everybody's strength is utilized in the process. That's the first step of participation is just that. That don't leave out the people who are quiet. That's not correct. So you need to be inclusive and they need to be participatory. And we make sure that there are workshops done specifically with this agenda. Then later on, when they go out to do the data collections in their communities, again, we insist and we ensure that suppose they are going into a household. I will give you a simple example. They have to do an interview of a woman. What happens is, if the woman's husband is there, he's not going to let her speak. He will only speak for herself. So we teach them how to negotiate that, to make sure that the woman ultimately gets to express what she wants or what she wants to say. And those are the critical things for them to understand, that the gender participation is critical. That the women must be equal part of this dialogue, and that usually takes a lot of effort, not just on our part, but also from their part, because they are not used to letting their sisters speak or their mother speak. So that is how every step of participation is built, and in a very Gandhian manner, we also emphasize that everybody's voice is important and every work is honored. There is nobody can say, this is not my job and I won't do it. Everything, every work, whatever it takes, it needs to be equally divided and everybody takes the responsibility. So suppose they have to get a research grant. Now, money is always a very huge power. So we want to make sure that the research grant is rotated and one person doesn't get it. So every 3 months somebody else will get it. So everybody learns how to manage the money, and the other people learn that, okay, today it is his responsibility, tomorrow it's going to be mine. So we all need to behave and be in this process together. That's how it goes through those small things. The participation is built in, inculcated, emphasized. It is best practiced than preached. All the decision making, all the policies, everything is decided by the team themselves. Second thing is we have been practicing participatory budgeting for the last 11 years. So anytime a grant comes to us, I would say, okay, this is $300,000 which has come from Ford Foundation. This is the project we have to run, these are the programs, and we will together decide that. Once that is done, the money is handed over to the team, and then they decide who will get what salary, including me, including my grant manager, including. They will decide what Barefoot researchers will receive, what will receive that. So the money's distribution and disbursement remains in the hand of the team, not in the hands of financial team. Their job is to manage it. My job is to bring the money, theirs is to manage it. But actually, the decisions are taken by the team. So that makes them a very important stakeholders. The project is theirs, or not ours. And I think that has made a world of difference in the world because they are the owners. That also puts me on a very good position because you cannot come complaining to me.
You decided.
You decided it. This is how it needs to be done. I'm here as a troubleshooter, problem solver, ideator, helping you in everything. But decision is yours. And I will abide by whatever decision you make. Even if sometimes I don't like it. But then I have one work like everybody else.
Right. And there's a lot to be decided. The average cohort for the youth fellowship program is what, 300 youth per year, is that right?
Yes, yes.
Wow, so about 30 teams
30
operating
teams.
simultaneously. Wow, that's quite a massive
It's a
program.
big, massive program.
Very impressive. And do you, just off the top of your head, is there a gender, male-female ratio that's average per year?
Usually we maintain the gender balances, we maintain the ethnicity balances, we try. We try and maintain the linguistic balances. We try, we may not succeed. But especially gender, I think we are very particular about it, and ethnicity balances. We also want to ensure we maintain the class balance, so it's not all poor or all this, because it is very important to have the diversity of education, of class backgrounds, of exposure background. That gives rise to a lot of cross-fertilization of ideas, and I think that's important for a program like that.
Right. Is each team that diverse, or is that a diversity across the entire cohort of 300 people? You try to build that diversity, or the teams more localized to the communities they come from?
No, I think within the group, the diversities are usually much less because they come from a certain community.
Quite specific to a neighborhood, okay.
But between the groups, the diversity is quite hard. I mean, large. I mean, we will have, on one end of the group, we'll have rat pickers who are completely illiterate or semi-literate. And on the other hand, we may have students going to Xavier's, a fancy college. And I remember in 2005, we had a group of construction workers from Thane with Kishan Mantri and his group. And then we had a group of students from Dhirubhai Ambani's school who could speak no other language but English, and their teacher was a British guy. So I would never forget this scene where Kishan is sitting with his group and this Dhirubhai Ambani school kids sitting with their group. They're sitting next to each other. They can't speak their language, they can't speak their language, but somehow they manage. And I think that's the beauty. That's the beauty of this program.
So this program, the Youth Fellowship Program, started in 2005. You're a decade into the process of learning, and lots of changes, I'm sure, along the way. But
Yes.
you have a vision of where this might go in the future. Do you have sort of some dreams of where you would like to take this as a next step for that program?
I think this vision has been there for a long time, is to say that we need to start a movement of barefoot researchers. We want to extend this methodology or this instrument across the country and even across globally. So we'll be very eager and happy to train other organizations, other youth programs across the nation or even in other countries, so that they could start something very similar which benefits the youth, their families and their communities, and ultimately the society. So we actually had a small experiment we did with an organization in Delhi where we taught them how to run the program for the migrant workers around Gurgaon. But I think we would really like to see it be taken up by many, many people. And I think Dr. Tandon, Rajesh Tandon, had requested us to write this as a case study for one of the UNESCO's books. And it is my hope that those case studies will be read by many people, and maybe many people will be inspired by the methodologies, and then we will be able to extend this program to especially areas in the developing countries.
Right,
That
because
would be ideal.
the demographic of youth being
Yes.
one half the population is not exceptional to India. That is in most of the global south now, with this very massive youth population, and what for them, how do they shape the world in a way which takes them where they want to go, and that those opportunities are not often presented, nor is I think that power to aspire, what is the terminology here, the power to aspire, or capacity to aspire, I think is one of the goals that you have for the program, to create that sense of aspiration, that sense of being able to control your own destiny of where you're going. And even if the city itself, we have some influence on where our city, our community is going, which I think is in itself the beginning of transformation. They have that vision that it could be something different.
They have to be leaders and agents of change for their own community first.
Sure.
Then they can certainly do that. And I would be really so happy to do a transcontinental program, say Joburg, a city like Joburg, or Mexico City, or something in Philippines, where the conditions are very much similar, or Bangkok, where the evidences of informal settlements exist in all these places. It would be great to have a program like that if we could find supporters of the idea.
Yeah, there are so many researchers in the academic sense doing work on informal settlements and informal economy, but I think this is quite a special niche here and powerful one to work with the youth who are in those places to help them think about their capacity to transform those situations and make them look different for themselves 10 years, for their children 20 years down the line. So it's quite exciting. So yeah, I would definitely be sharing this video with the people that I think are also working in some similar spaces with you. Well, I've sort of shoehorned you into the youth participation, the youth fellowship program, but PUKAR has some other areas that you work in more broadly as well. So what are the other rubrics in the other spaces that you're doing work?
So our other rubric is related to urbanism. It is titled as Urbanism, Spatial Utopia and Contested Realities. And I think in all urban areas globally, space has become a huge issue, and a lot of contestations are. And space is one of the resources. So the resource distribution and resource management in a city, whether it is space, it is water, it is electricity, housing, transportation, everything, has become very contested, and urbanization unfortunately has very skewed patterns of development, where a lot of people in every city globally in the informal settlements or at the bottom of the pyramid are left out of all this development paradigm, and that's where the contestations take place. So under this rubric we look at how does urbanization affect various strata of people, and what are their problems which are related specifically to space and urbanization. And we have done massive projects in that sector. Right now, currently our teams are in a tribal district of Participatory, which is our third newly minted tribal district in the state of Maharashtra. And they are looking at digital inclusion of the urban rural poor, and how that will help them with economic empowerment, social empowerment, and changing their lives for better. So that's under that rubric. And the other, our final rubric is healthy cities and wealthy cities, where we essentially focus on issues related to social determinants of slum health. So the focus is mostly on all the issues, including water, housing, sanitation, energy, tenures, and also mental health. So we have also looked at mental health, and we're trying to produce a indications of slum diversity, an index sort of slum diversity. Like we have indexes of health, we have indexes of any economic empowerment. We want to look at how living in slum actually produces a different index. This morning I had a meeting with Professor David Bloom from Harvard School of Public Health, and decided to get, David has been my OPI for a while now, and we just today talked about exploring the aging processes in slum, because it's much different than other areas of the city.
Right.
So how does aging happen in the slum? What happens to them? Where do they go? Who looks after them? How does it all work? So we are looking at launching a project related to that.
It's very exciting. I mean, I do feel that in some ways the discourse around some of these informal settlements has shifted, and people who are looking and studying do see and promote in various films that have come out sort of saying, look, no, these are very active places. People are doing lots of work. It's not a place of people just waiting for a handout. These are probably some of the most active entrepreneurial places in the city, but I think we could also go a step too far in valorizing the work that people are doing and not notice what's not being done by us as a society or as a nation, a municipality. When you look at these places that have open sewers, water that runs for 1 to 2 hours a day only at certain periods of time, working environments with no air filtration, no ability to sort of maintain the health of the workers, and their entire livelihoods are hanging in the balance every day, whether it's the ability to keep all their fingers or simply to have their lungs function because of the particulates in the air. The thing that keeps them going is also the thing that often undermines their health and brings them out of that ability to be productive.
See, so for example, Mumbai, slums of Mumbai have the largest number of multi-drug resistant TB.
Oh, wow.
It is an issue of extreme concern globally, because once it spreads, nobody the bug doesn't differentiate between rich and the poor. Although statistically the poor will get it more than the rich, but the rich also can get it once they get it. So these are the kind of global superbugs. Where are they produced? They're produced in places like informal settlements. So these are issues of global concern. Public health has become, of course, very critical these days because of the globalization and easy travel. So therefore, many of the academic people have woken up to the fact that we need to study the slum population with a lot of care as opposed to just ignoring them. And that change is very welcome, I think.
And for those who haven't studied these areas, the population densities are phenomenal. A place like Derby probably has a population density 7 to 8 times what New York City's population is, which is probably hard for most people to imagine. It's quite extraordinary to think. And then multiple layers of housing on that, so the ability of diseases to transmit through an environment like that. Particularly, as you can see, it's quite warm where we are today. We're about to enter into monsoon season, but as much as that's helpful for cleaning the air, for cooling people down after this immense period of hot weather, and in many of these areas there's no real way for the water to exit. So when the rains come, all the open sewers flood, and most of the communities are then walking in sewage for different periods of time, which then exacerbates all the other health concerns.
Diseases, diarrhea.
Cholera,
Diarrhea, huge killer of our children under 5. So our children mortality, infant mortality.
Yeah. So very, very significant issues. So again, the importance of focusing on these informal settlements and focusing on youth as the agents of change there. We'll just to zoom out a bit. What I think maybe you're sort of pointing toward it with this work with Dr. Bloom, but where do you hope that the PUKAR will be in another 10 years? You've been here around 15 years. Where would you like to be 10 years down the road? Is it more this global vision of connecting with others working in this field, or what are your aspirations?
So I look at PUKAR 15 years from now as one of the premier institutions of training people globally related to production knowledge at the community base. So we should be one of the premier training institutions for community-based participatory urban research. And we should be also one of the premier research place for doing community-based participatory research in the informal settlements. Because I think the kind of expertise we are generating today will be validated. They are validated already. We have 7, 8 papers based on our research in very prestigious journals in the world, including social science and medicine. And we expect to do more of that kind of work and to become the expertise in related to slum health and urbanization processes, but mostly for people who are at the bottom.
Okay, well, just one final question. For you, as we communicate to the wider world through the video and through the internet, you know, the wider development community, the wider research community, what are, for you, in the aggregate sense, what are the takeaways that you hope people can learn from the PUKAR experience and all the work that you've done that can be influential to their thinking?
I think what I would like to say to people is that understand the importance of youth and their aspirations. Work with them because the world is so young today, as it has never been this young. And if you really want to bring about long-term changes in the way this world is going, if we really think it needs to be made inclusive, if the development has to be inclusive, the development has to be participatory, if the development paradigm has to benefit everybody around, which is what Sustainable Development Goals are trying to do now, I think it would be critical to take into fold tomorrow's leaders. And since the world is so young, between China and India and most of the African countries, these are the people who are going to be deciding where the world is going to go. And looking at that, it would be critical to work with them and to enable them with knowledge and skills and right attitude that will help everybody. It doesn't matter where you are. I mean, even if you may be sitting in Netherlands, your security ultimately will depend upon the equality or inequality of people who are sitting in the third world countries. So you can't deny that. And it was just yesterday, I was attending Governor Raghuram Rajan's lecture, and we were looking at where the world would be 35 years from now. And he said, where we can't predict anything, but just one event like war would change everything that we predict. It's so true.
Sure, that's what
Violence is...
Yeah, saying to my students, it's not really a choice of do you want to participate in a career in development. There is no far away now. We're all part of the same questions and the same struggles, and we have to come together and find ways to share knowledge and to create knowledge for those people who are in those experiences most directly, and learn from them how best to address those problems, not to decide from somewhere else what needs to happen for people. So, Dr. Anita Patil-Deshmukh, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a really lovely opportunity to speak with you, and on behalf of everybody watching this, thanks for all the work that PUKAR has done, and we wish you the best in continuing the work here in Mumbai, and look forward to checking in with you in a couple of years to see how things have evolved.
Thank you to you, to your team, to Ideation, that this needs to go out. I think that's a huge validation for us, that you believed in the methodology and that you believe that this needs to be disseminated. So it's a great honor for us, and we appreciate that deeply, and more power to all of us together in this journey.
Absolutely. And look to the blog for more information about PUKAR if you'd like to learn more about the methodology and about all of their work and their outputs. Thanks for watching today. Thank you.